Our mission is to make lives better for the Filipino. In more than 3 decades, the Philippine Council for Health Research and Development has invested in research and innovation, in people, in infrastructure, and in support systems to create an enabling environment for health research in the country, to generate innovations and solutions to our pressing health problems.
Created in 1982 as a sectoral council of the Department of Science and Technology, the PCHRD is mandated to coordinate all health research in the country. The PCHRD has grown and expanded its services in the areas of agenda setting, research management, capacity building, research dissemination, translation and utilization, resource mobilization, and national and international collaborations. The PCHRD promotes health research ethics as the country's commitment to the protection of the rights, welfare, and well-being of human participants in research. Generated from the funded projects of the Council were important healthcare policies, products, and services. Even before the passage of the Technology Transfer Law of 2009, the Council already undertook technology commercialization, which seeded the growth of medicinal plant products in the country. Lagundi for cough and Sambonga's treatment for kidney stones are now household names. With health innovations in the pipeline, the Council is, at the same time, building the capacity of research institutions and researchers to make sure that research projects are technology and industry ready. Research for evidence-informed policy making is an equally important path for our research outputs. Our supported researches contributed to the development of the expanded program on immunization, the Newborn Screening Act, the National Health Insurance Act, the Philippine National Health Research System Act, the National Integrated Cancer Control Act, and the Universal Healthcare Act. To ensure that the country has a cadre of researchers who will undertake needed researches, the PCHRD provides scholarships, research fellowships, and other assistance for capacity building. What sustains a health research system is communication. With this in mind, the Council maximizes the use of traditional and new media. Partnership is employed as a strategic approach. Partnership with media, partnership with the regional consortium's communication teams, and partnership with everyone who shares the Council's vision. Decades may have passed, but the PCHRD's mandate remains the same. PCHRD, making your life better.
Okay, good morning, everyone. To our esteemed panel of experts, our friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, we are very happy that you are able to join us today. I am your moderator, Dr. Jello Apostol, an environmental health specialist from the Ateneo School of Medicine and Public Health. And welcome once again to Talakayang Heartbeat, a media conference organized by the Department of Science and Technology, Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, or DOST-PCHRD. As a recap for everyone, Talakayang Heartbeat was launched by DOST-PCHRD way back in 2019 to disseminate the latest updates in health research and to facilitate dialogue between health research stakeholders, the media, and the greater Filipino community. The name Heartbeat stands for Health Research and Technology Beat and has been a very strategic way for the science community to interface with the media and the general public about our exciting projects on health research and development. Now, before we proceed with the program proper, let me share with you a few house rules to ensure a smooth flow for our discussion and to have a truly engaging program. First is we'd like to ask our virtual audience to kindly mute your microphones and to turn off your video cameras for now unless otherwise requested, especially later on during our Q&A portion. And speaking of Q&A, should you have any questions regarding the presentations, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A panel, which can be found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will make sure to address them once we proceed with the Q&A segment at the later part of the program. Most importantly, we'd like to engage everyone to please share this virtual event to your networks and contacts. If you have friends or colleagues who are having problems connecting to Zoom, please do invite them to join us through our Facebook live stream on the DOST-PCHRD Facebook page at facebook.com/DOST-PCHRD. And now to officially begin our program, may we request everyone to pay attention to your screens for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem to be followed by a short prayer.
Our ever-loving Father, the core of every reason, the source of truth. You who made the earth and the heavens are the ultimate goal of every knowledge seekers, the infinite wisdom, the cause of all that is good. We are truly grateful for this opportunity to gather together as a community despite the challenges we face each day. Yet you remained and gave us strength to carry on the responsibilities of bearing intelligence and using them for better purposes. We now humbly ask you to join us in our endeavor to explore the wonders of life in the world for knowledge's sake, that in whatever we learn today, we become more grounded to you, who is truth, who is love. We pray that you bless our speakers, the fount of your infinite knowledge, that they can share something worthwhile despite the limited time we have. They can channel all they know and share to us the beauty and truth of living as your child. We pray that you guide our participants, the seekers of your boundless knowledge, that they may continue to persevere in the search and be deemed worthy to share what they learn from today's session. Sanctify us, O Lord, not because we are worthy of it, but because we believe in your love and mercy, that at the end of the day, we can take home something that's amazing and meaningful. This we ask and pray through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Again, welcome everyone to Talakayang Heartbeat. To formally open this program, let us all welcome the Executive Director of DOST-PCHRD, and the lead coordinator of the Philippine National Health Research System, Dr. Jaime C. Montoya.
To the Department of Science and Technology Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña, DOST Undersecretary for Research and Development Rowena Cristina Guevara, DOST Undersecretary for S&T Services Renato Solidum Jr., to our esteemed panel of experts, Dr. Delia B. Senoro, Dr. Lori Shane Busa, Ms. Maria Cristina Ramos, our moderator for today, Dr. Jemin Louis Apostol, our friends from the media, and to everyone joining us live in today's conference, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 6th installment of the Talakayang Heartbeat. Just last month, we met on the same platform to discuss the latest updates on some of the completed projects dedicated to our pandemic response. In today's conference, we will focus on some of the initiatives on disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, or DRR-CCA in health. Within the DOST's harmonized National Health Research and Development Agenda 2017 to 2022, there is a dedicated track on DRR-CCA, which cuts across all S&T sectors. To advance health resiliency against emerging diseases and threats, a similar theme is also seen in the National Unified Health Research Agenda. Our programs in the DRR-CCA are aligned with the Sendai Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and the Sustainable Development Goals. While this field is relatively new, having been added to our priority research areas only in 2017, I am pleased to share that the program has already supported numerous projects which aim to mitigate the health effects of disasters and climate change in the Philippines. In 2020 alone, we allocated more than 40 million pesos to projects which span a variety of topics, such as the assessment of the disaster preparedness of hospitals, health consequences related to high heat index, and even studies on the Marawi siege, among others. To further strengthen our capacities in DRR-CCA, we also work to provide support in building our pool of experts in the field. By initiating training and workshops, we hope to encourage more researchers to engage in the field, increase health research outputs, and generate a wider impact for our projects. To date, we already went to 14 regions to capacitate researchers in crafting research proposals and translating or utilizing research findings for DRR-CCA policies, programs, or services. To share with you some of the accomplishments of these priority areas, we are joined today by the lead researchers behind the following projects: the development of health index and vulnerability reduction system for Region 4B, or the DHIVE 4B, the development of microfluidic paper-based analytical devices for the detection of pathogens in water as a disaster risk preventive tool, and the development of ready-to-eat food products for children aged 1 to 5 years old. Research on DRR-CCA is critical to provide evidence-based solutions that will strengthen our country's capacity in responding to emerging threats and in mitigating potential risks brought about by disasters and a changing climate. As this is an avenue which aims to increase appreciation of our initiatives in health, we hope that you, our partners from the media, will take this opportunity to ask questions and seek answers. We at PCHRD with support from the DOST, are always grateful for your support to our initiatives, and we hope that you will continue to support us in disseminating timely and reliable information to our communities. In fact, we are excited to share with you some of our programs and accomplishments in this area as we prepare for the celebration of the DOST-Philippine Council for Health Research and Development's 40th anniversary in March next year. As we go on with our vision, we aim to make sure that research on DRR-CCA and other fields will be utilized to ultimately make lives better for the Filipino. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga pong muli sa inyong lahat.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Montoya, for that very insightful opening. We will surely stay tuned to more updates from the Council, especially with the upcoming celebration of PCHRD's 40th anniversary next year. Today, we will focus on some of the research projects dedicated to disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation in health, or DRR-CCA. To Dr. Jimmy's point earlier, it is well established that the Philippines is a hotspot for a significant number of environmental and climate-related disasters. And these disasters have significant impact to the lives and livelihood of affected communities. And as such, the role of research and development in understanding this risk, as well as in addressing this risk, is extremely important. To this end, and also as mentioned by Dr. Jimmy, the DOST-PCHRD prioritizes and invests in the field of DRR-CCA as seen in the HNRDA. Now, to give us an overview of how the department works to help protect our communities against emerging threats through R&D, let us all welcome the DOST Undersecretary for S&T Services and the officer in charge for the Undersecretary for Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change. Let's all give a virtual round of applause to Undersecretary Renato J. Solidum.
To Department of Science and Technology, Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña, Undersecretary for Research and Development, Rowena Cristina Guevara, Philippine Council for Health, Research and Development, Executive Director Jaime Montoya, to our experts, Dr. Delia Sinoro, Dr. Lori Shane Busa, and Ms. Maria Cristina Ramos, our moderator, Dr. German Luis Apstol, our partners from the media, and everyone joining us virtually, good morning. It is my pleasure to be part of today's Talakayang Heartbeat, highlighting the DOST-PCHRD's projects on disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and health. The year 2020 will perhaps be remembered as a daunting time across the world, especially for us Filipinos. Aside from battling a pandemic, we faced several natural disasters, such as the eruption of the Taal volcano in January of 2020, and a series of destructive typhoons across several regions during the latter part of the year. These unprecedented events intensified economic and health burdens to our communities. Amid these challenges, the DOST remained committed to its mandate of advancing scientific solutions and innovations for the benefit of the Filipino people. While natural disasters make us vulnerable to health hazards, such as disease outbreaks and limited supply of food and clean water, research and development is a tool we can leverage to lessen the possible impacts. This press conference is an apt opportunity to showcase our research and innovations in disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation in health, which aims to build healthy and resilient communities. We are glad to have all of you today to share our work and provide a platform for our media partners to engage in informative discussions with our experts. On behalf of the DOST, I would like to thank our project leaders for being our close partners in generating solutions that will protect our communities from extreme effects of natural disasters and its consequences to health. To our friends in the media, thank you for helping us bring information to our fellow Filipinos, which are especially critical in times of disasters. This time, we hope that you can share some good news about the invaluable role of R&D in mitigating the impacts and risks of natural disasters to the public. In closing, we guarantee everyone that the DOST will continue to push for efforts geared towards the best interest of the Filipino people. In turn, we look forward to your continued support for our activities and continue to help us bring science closer to the people. Marami pong salamat sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much, Usec Solidum. I believe it is very important to highlight what you said po, no, about the need for an evidence-based approach leveraging on research and development to address the ongoing and upcoming threats of environment and climate-related disasters. Moving forward, to share with us the latest updates on some of DOST-PCHRD supported projects on DRR-CCA, allow me to introduce our next speaker. A highly esteemed engineer, he started his service at the DOST as the Planning Services Head, served as the first director of the Technology Application and Promotion Institute, and also as the Undersecretary for S&T Services. It is my great honor to introduce to you, and let us give a virtual applause for the hardworking Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology, Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña.
Magandang umaga sa lahat, sa aking mga kasama sa DOST, si Undersecretary Renato Solidum, na Undersecretary for Scientific and Technological Services at OIC ng aming Office of Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change, kay Usec Rowena Guevara, Undersecretary for Research and Development, kay Usec Sancho Maborang for Regional Operations, aming Director ng Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, si Dr. Jaime Montoya, sa ating mga project leaders, Dr. Delia Senoro, Dr. Lori Shane Busa, Ms. Maria Cristina Ramos, sa ating mga project team members, sa mga moderators today, si Dr. Jaimino Luis Apostol, at sa ating mga kaibigan sa media, magandang umaga sa lahat. Salamat sa inyong pagsama dito sa ating episode ng Talakayang Heartbeat. Sa Heartbeat today, ang ating ipapakita ay ang mga sinuportahang proyekto ng PCHRD sa ilalim ng Disaster Risk Reduction, Climate Change Adaptation in Health Research Program. As the National Lead Agency for Health Research, kailangan malaman natin bakit mahalaga ang disaster risk bilang isang priority sa Department of Science and Technology. Sa susunod na slide ay makikita natin, nakalagay dito ang isa tayo sa world's most affected countries by extreme weather events. Ito ay ayon sa World Risk Index 2020 report at tayo ay nasa rank na number 9 among the world's most affected countries from extreme weather events. We move on to the next slide. Dito makikita natin, in November 2020 alone, ang ating bansa ay nakaranas ng 4 na typhoons. Isang buwan lang yan, November lang. Kasama na yung isa sa pinakamalakas during the year sa buong mundo, ang Typhoon Rolly. Of course, hindi natin malilimutan ang mga bagyong Yolanda, Pablo at Sendong. Sa larawang makikita natin ngayon, ang sitwasyon ng libu-libong Pilipino, lalo na sa evacuation center, matapos silang maapektuhan, lalo na ang kanilang mga bahay ng natural disaster, ay kita natin na nagsisiksikan sila dyan with limited access to clean water at sa food supply. Ang mga circumstances na ito ay nagpapahirap sa mga biktima ng ating mga disasters at sila ay lalong nagiging vulnerable, okay? Sa paglaganap ng diseases at iba pang mga health risk. So ang ating Disaster Risk Reduction, Climate Change Adaptation in Health Research Program ay inintroduce ng ating PCHRD in response to this situation. This is to mitigate the health effects of disasters and climate change in our country and make our communities more resilient. In the next slide, we will see what are the programs that have been undertaken by the PCHRD's Disaster Risk Reduction, Climate Change Adaptation in Health program for research. Okay? Kasama dito ang apat na program areas: science and technology innovations to improve health services during disasters. Ang pangalawa ay ang food innovations to mitigate the nutritional and dietary effects of disasters. Ang pangatlo ay ang mga research na nag-ensure ng health consequences during disasters ay nababawasan. At ang pang-apat ay ang climate change adaptation in health. Sa susunod na slide ay makikita naman natin ang mga pondong ginamit ng Philippine Council for Health Research and Development para dito sa mga researches na ito. So ito ay magmula noong 2017. So mula nung nagsimula itong kanilang specific research program na ito, DRR-CCA in Health, ay nagbigay na ng suporta, okay, na umaabot sa 70 milyong piso ang Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, at ito ay nagko-cover ng 28 proyekto. Sa susunod na mga slide ay meron tayong informasyon, okay, tungkol sa naibigay na budget sa 5 proyekto at dun sa 11 na ongoing. Okay, so yung 5 proyekto nakalagay dito na completed na, 11 na ongoing at 4 na bago. So at this point, allow me to introduce our featured projects for today's Talakayang Heartbeat on DRR-CCA in Health. Ang una nating makikita dito ay yung proyekto na pinamagatang Development of Health Index and Vulnerability Reduction System, at ito ay ginawa sa Region 4B o sa Mimaropa. Okay? To empower local government units in Region 4B with innovative and research-based tools for disaster preparedness and response, okay, which the primary goal of the project DHIVE 4B or Department of Health Index and Vulnerability Reduction System for Region 4B. Ito ay isang proyekto na pinamunuan ni Dr. Delia Senorio ng Mapua University. The research-based emergency response tools include Health Vulnerability Indices, MAPS, and a Smart Emergency Response System termed ISALBA. The maps are useful because they contain information on the environmental quality, such as quality of water, sediments, soil, crops, rice, and other natural resources in specific areas and households in Marinduque province. The ISALBA, on the other hand, is a mobile and web-based application and emergency response system that integrates health vulnerability indices, health issues, environment quality, and disaster risk used by different levels of communities, from household to barangay, to municipality, to provincial and regional, before, during, and after the disaster or calamity. ISALBA provides communication tools that will aid emergency responders in making absolute decisions during disasters and to help prepare the local government unit for health monitoring, route planning, defining optimal evacuation policies and adaptation measures in events of disaster. Alam naman natin na kailangan ng mabilis na desisyon sa mga pagkakataong ito. So, narito ang ating slide na nagbibigay ng updates tungkol dito sa DHIVE team, okay, o project. They have turned over 323, okay, indices maps, okay, health vulnerability indices maps to 6 municipalities of Marinduque. And they have trained 338 local trainers on how to use the eSalba system. Following the successful rollout, the project team is currently in close coordination with the LGUs of Calapan, San Jose, Romblon, and Puerto Princesa for the implementation of the DHIVE in these provinces. So ito ay i-replicate na, i-roll out na sa iba pang probinsya ng Mimaropa. Ngayon naman ay tingnan natin itong proyekto na ang pamagat ay development of microfluidic paper-based analytical devices for the detection of diarrhea causing pathogens in water. Alam naman natin na itong diarrhea ay very common, nangyayari sa mga pagkakataong ito, lalo na dun sa mga evacuation centers. Our second project here was implemented by the Nueva Vizcaya State University under the leadership of Dr. Lori Shane Busa. Our proponent has a specialization in studying paper microfluidics, or a kind of device that can detect many infectious agents and chemical contaminants. Seeing her kababayans without access to clean and safe water supply, once displaced of their homes during natural disaster, therefore increasing their vulnerability to waterborne diseases, Dr. Busa developed the microfluidic paper-based analytical device, and this device can detect diarrhea-causing pathogens by assessing the water quality after disaster events. It uses the lab-on-paper concept, which condenses the equipment, resources, personnel, and time needed to obtain an accurate result. Napakagandang innovation po nito. Dito naman ay bibigyan tayo ng update tungkol dito sa proyekto na ito. Currently, the team for this project is revising previous device templates to enable their MPADs to detect E. coli in samples. So this is really already an expansion of the coverage. Now, we have also, as an update, that once a final prototype becomes available, the project team will proceed with the necessary tests to evaluate the performance of the device. The project team has identified 14 municipalities in Nueva Vizcaya for the field testing of the device prototypes. In the next slide, we have the third project, the development of ready-to-eat food products for children aged 1 to 5 years old. Alam po naman natin na itong mga bata sa edad na ito ay kailangan pa ng alaga at alalay, at hindi pa sila independent. So with limited access to nutritious food in evacuation centers during disasters, proper nutrition becomes a challenge, especially for vulnerable populations. And one of the vulnerable population are children. So this third project of ours aims to address the concerns on undernourishment in the events of disasters. This is led by Ms. Maria Cristina Ramos of the Philippine Women's College of Davao. This ready-to-eat food will be made especially for the nutrition requirements of children aged 1 to 5 years old. This ready-to-eat emergency products, uses the abundant fresh produce in the region. The updates for this project are as follows. After a series of data gathering and surveys with chosen target barangays, the project team has identified the food products that will be developed. Nakikita po natin sa larawan, mukhang masarap, sa itsura pa lang. We have the fruit veggie leather with puffed rice and peanuts. We have the all veggie mongo. We have the all veggie cornmeal porridge, and we have the seed-enriched whole grain biscuit cookies. Lahat po nito ay napaka-nutritious. The other update on this project is that the team was already able to develop the product formulation for the veggie leather with puffed rice and peanuts and the seed-enriched whole grain biscuit cookies. In the meantime, the development of the all veggie mongo and all-veggie cornmeal porridge are still ongoing. The team has conducted already sensory evaluation for the completed formulas with the residents, with mothers and children of the target barangays to assess the acceptability of the food products. So they are now into the development of packaging and production processes. I suppose pumasa naman po doon sa kanilang taste test, okay, sensory evaluation. Now, the next slide tells us about the project called Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change Adaptation, or the Program on Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change Adaptation Health Program. Through this and the many more projects that the DOST-PCHRD is supporting under this DRR-CCA program, DOST hopes to make Filipino communities more health resilient, no matter what challenges we may face in the future. To our Filipino researchers, on behalf of the DOST, I thank you for your dedication to bring scientific solutions to every Filipino, especially during these trying times. We commit our continued support to the health research community and hope for our strengthened partnerships. And lastly, I also extend my gratitude to our media attendees for being our constant partner in providing the public with accurate and updated information in R&D in the country. Your work is a crucial part of our mission to bring science to the people. Alam po ninyo, ay lahat ng aspeto halos ay natakal dito sa mga iba't ibang proyekto na ito. Nandyan yung decision support system para sa ating mga those that actually implement, during the implement actions during the time of the disaster. Nandyan din po yung may kinalaman sa pagde-develop ng vulnerability indices. Nandyan din yung pagdevelop ng tool to determine, to detect the diarrhea causing pathogens in water, isang common problem during evacuations. And of course, nandyan din po yung ating pagdevelop ng mga food products na ika nga ready to eat, convenient, okay, at napaka-nutritious para sa ating mga children from age 1 to 5. So as we move on with the open forum, together with our project leaders, we hope that this event will be a platform for everyone to learn more about the role of R&D in solving real-world problems. Okay? Nakakatuwa po kasi yung iba ditong detalye ay ngayon ko lang din nalaman, at ako'y natutuwa sa progreso ng mga proyekto na ito. Alam kong ginagawa nila itong mga proyekto na ito, pero itong updates ay napaka-current. Salamat po sa inyong pakikinig.
Thank you very much, Secretary De La Peña, for that very in-depth discussion on the objectives, intended impact, as well as providing the latest and comprehensive updates on the different projects on DRR-CCA. Indeed, research on this field is very critical to provide support to our communities, promote disaster preparedness, and to mitigate the challenges brought by environment and climate-related disasters. And as a researcher myself, I find it also very encouraging to know that DOST and the government is making significant investments to support researches in all phases, from development down to translating research impact to our communities all over the country. And talking about research impact, we will now welcome at this point our panel of experts into the virtual floor to address your questions. Prior to this event, we actually compiled the advanced questions that you sent to us. And we will first go through these advanced questions, but also if the virtual audience has some additional questions, you may drop them in the Zoom Q&A panel or in our Facebook comment section along with your name and affiliation. Our secretariat will be curating and collecting these questions, and we will try to address as many live questions as possible. Now, allow me to introduce our esteemed panel of experts. As I call your name, may we please request you to open your cameras so we can spotlight your handsome and beautiful faces. Of course, leading our esteemed panel of expert is our very own Secretary, DOST Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña. Good morning once again, Sec. Also joining our panel of experts is the Undersecretary for Research and Development, Dr. Rowena Cristina Guevara. Good morning, Usec Guevara. Thank you for joining us. Also, joining our panel of experts is the Undersecretary for S&T Services and the Officer in Charge for the Undersecretary for Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change. Once again, Undersecretary for Renato Solidum. Good morning, Usec.
I'm not allowed to open my video.
Okay, our Secretariat will help you with that in a bit. And just moving on, also joining our esteemed panel of experts is once again DOST-PCHRD Executive Director, Dr. Jaime Montoya. Good morning once again, Dr. Jaime.
Good morning, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.
Okay, and now moving on to the different project leaders of our various DRR-CCA projects featured for today's Talakayang Heartbeat. First, from Mapua University, we have Dr. Delia B. Senoro, who serves as the project leader for the development of Health Index, Vulnerability to Extreme Environmental Events for Marinduque Island, or the D-Hive Project. Good morning, Dr. Delia.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.
All right. And now, from Nueva Vizcaya State University, we have Dr. Lori Shane Busa, who serves as the project leader for the development of microfluidic paper-based analytical devices for the detection of pathogens in water as a disaster risk preventive tool. Good morning, Dr. Lori.
Good morning po. Good morning to everyone.
Okay, and last but definitely not the least, we have Miss Maria Cristina Ramos from the Philippine Women College of Davao. She is the project leader for MSFS for the development of ready-to-eat food products for children aged 1 to 5 years old. Good morning, Dr. Ramos. Do we have Dr. Ramos with us?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Sorry for that.
It's all right, Dr. Before we proceed with our Q&A section, I'd like to highlight how we have a very strong all-women team who we are featuring for our DRR-CCA projects for today's Talakayang Heartbeat, which really goes to show how we have definitely modernized and highlighted the role of women scientists in research and development. So props to that. And now moving on to the meat of today's program, the format of Talakayang Heartbeat is that we put greater premium on the dialogue between our researchers and the audience. And at this point, we'd like to officially open the floor for your questions. Should you have any questions apart from the advanced inquiries that you have sent to us, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A panel, which can be found at the bottom of our Zoom page. And we will make sure to address them once we've covered the advanced questions that you sent. Okay, I hope our esteemed panel of experts is ready for a lot of very interesting questions that we have in store for them. To kick off our question and answer portion, we start with a question directed to Secretary de la Peña. And the question is, what is the motivation of DOST in making DRR for health a priority research area? I understand, Secretary de la Peña, that DOST actually has very expansive programs on DRR-CCA, but why put health or why add health as an attached priority area on top of the programs, the extensive programs that you already have on disaster management?
Jamin, can you restate the questions? Yun na lang talagang question.
Yes,
Minus all the palamuti.
yeah, so the question po is, what is the motivation of DOST in including health or in focusing health, DRR for health as a priority research area on top of the other disaster management programs that you have?
Well, disaster risk reduction is a major priority under the National Health Harmonized Development Agenda, National Harmonized Development Research and Development Agenda. And of course, disaster risk reduction involves many components. There is the prevention part, there is the ano nga tawag doon, Usec Rene? The 4 pillars in disaster risk reduction.
Prevention, mitigation, preparedness.
Ha?
Ang 4 pillars po, 4 themes. Prevention
In DRR.
Prevention and mitigation,
Okay.
preparedness, response, and recovery.
Okay, so it's very important for the response and recovery part. And so we know that the health aspect is a very important component in that. And while we do research in other areas, okay, since this is part of our priority agenda, we do research in the health aspects of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. Of course, if you ask us of the primary motivation, it comes from our tagline, Science for the People.
Thank you very much, Sec de la Peña. And as a medical professional myself, we really appreciate how you've highlighted health as a central component of the research agenda on DRR and CCA. Now, our next question is directed to Usec Rowena Guevara. And the question, Usec, is that, so earlier, our earlier speakers mentioned the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, which outlines the targets and priorities for action to prevent new and reduce existing disaster risks. But so far, Usec, a lot of the policy and programmatic actions on DRR has been focused on disasters resulting from natural processes. Now, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we are highlighting disasters that are of public health in nature. So you have your public health emergencies or disasters. In your opinion, Usec Guevara, do you think that there is a need to maybe adapt this framework or maybe strengthen the public health aspects when it comes to disaster risk reduction and management?
Thank you for that question. I thought we have already adopted it because of the way that we have been reacting during the pandemic, during and after. In fact, naglatag nga ang DOST ng plano, meron tayong short term, meron tayong medium term, tapos meron tayong long term. Doon sa short term, syempre react ka agad kasi hindi mo na maakalaing mangyayari ito eh. So yung isa sa mga magandang ginawa ng PCHRD especially, yung mga technologies nila, niliwis nila ng konti yung gamit. So for example, yung faster na dapat for dengue, ngayon ginamit na rin for COVID-19. Yung RX box dapat for telemed, ginamit na rin for for hospital situation. And then, ang maganda, pumasok din yung PCHRD sa yung PCHRD. So kunyari, PCHRD, sa kanila yung ventilator mga designs. So they were able to get 15 research groups to come in and design those ventilators. And then they paved the way such that nasa papasok na ng clinical trial yung mga ventilators. Such a short time. These are the knee-jerk reaction of our councils. And then of course, PCHRD, talagang they did the distribution of goods coming from their researchers. So that was the initial reaction. Tapos yung second, syempre may medium term. dahil may mga kailangan tayong ilatag na ibang research, like we had to cancel or delay some of our projects to make way to the clinical trials for Lagundi, for BCO, for Tawa-Tawa for COVID-19. And then we had to fund the Gen Amplify field implementation. We also funded the clinical trials joining WHO, the Solidarity vaccine trials. And we have our own trials for mix and match, talagang medium term. So these are going to take about a year to 2 years from now to finish. But then, nilatag din natin yung long term, like the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines is now with our lawmakers. And this year, we have already started on research on virology and vaccines because we cannot be caught flat-footed again. Yung sinasabi nga ni Usec Rowena, yung preparedness, in the next pandemic, we have to do better than how we did before. So our hope is that the Philippines Virology Institute of the Philippines will have a slew of collaborators from the academe, from industry, and from the government to make sure that this is not going to happen again, that we will be able to develop our own vaccines in the next pandemic and so on. So yes, we have adopted that framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Usec Guevara. And I like how you mentioned that we are seeing the role of R&D not only in the short term, not only during the response phase, but really being able to leverage R&D into the long term. We talk about building back better. And DOST-PCHRD and DOST as a whole is really putting forward R&D as a critical tool for building back better. Thank you very much, Usec Guevara. The next question po is for Usec Renato Solidum. And I like how you mentioned earlier, Usec Solidum, how it's very important to bring research closer to people. And for that po, we highlight as well the importance of research education, research communication. Okay, and now Usec Renato Solidum, the question for you po is how are programs along disaster risk reduction and resilience education or DRR education being developed, implemented, and facilitated by the department?
Well, first of all, if we want everyone to really implement things at the individual and family level up to the national level, we need to make sure that everyone from the ordinary people up to the national leaders understand the risk. What will kill them or what will impact them? So the Department of Science and Technology would first try to improve their knowledge on processes that would trigger these various hazards, be it the frequently occurring weather-related hazards, the geophysical events like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunami, and of course, the current climate change, which is the global warming phase. Second, we need to make sure that we really project not only the potential impacts where this will be affecting people, but more importantly, who will be affected and the scale of the effect. We need to develop hazard and risk scenarios. And the third is to communicate the risk, the impact, and most importantly, how people should respond to it. As you know, when disasters happen, we see a lot of health consequences. Aside from death, we see a lot of injury. The interruption of food and water supply will render non-availability of nutritious food and of course clean water. When it comes to climate change, people have to be assisted on how they can imagine not only the natural disasters that they have experienced, what can happen in the future. For example, studies of Pag-asa would indicate by the mid-21st century, if the greenhouse gas emission will remain the same, we will see 1.2 degrees centigrade to 2.3 degrees centigrade addition in temperature. That's very hot. And there will be changes in the way rainfall will be distributed all over the country. And so we will see most likely more rainfall in the north and drier times in the mid to southern part of the Philippines. And you know, climate change would threaten the human health and well-being in many ways, including the extreme weather, too hot or too much rain sometimes. it will also affect the air quality. And of course, disasters and climate change will affect the mental health. Mental health is very important. And there will be diseases that may be carried if there will be changes in the rainfall distribution. So it is important for us to do this. So from the department's point of view, the Harmonized National Research and Development Agenda was created, and every research must be translated into community action or commercialization. And that is why this heartbeat talk is very important, because now we can see the projects developed through PCHRD and how this can help the people through community efforts and also through commercialization. So education is very important, and all organizations of DOST have some role in it, especially the councils. And for health, it's PCHRD. But FIVOX and PAGASA and Science and Technology Information Institute would be on the more common natural events and, of course, climate change.
Thank you very much, Usec Solidum. I think it's very important what you said, how we all should start with awareness. And awareness is what really will enable people to actually appropriately act and respond, and maybe even adapt to current and upcoming disasters. So thank you very much, Usec. Now our next question this time is for Dr. Jaime Montoya. And as a background for this question, we all know how we have a devolved health system, and the mandate and responsibility for the delivery of health services, even during disasters, is given to our local government units. So Dr. Jaime, the question is, how does DOST-PCHRD support our local government units in sufficiently and effectively planning for emerging health risks and public health emergencies? Dr. Jaime.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. Well, first of all, at the national level, we have a close coordination with the Department of Health, which is also a member of the DRR-CCA. I'd like to say that the DOH specifically asked for our assistance in order to do researches that address some of the health concerns brought about by disasters. Because maybe Usec Solidum can also mention that the emphasis for quite some time on disaster response is actually the response of physical response to the disaster. So we have been focused on the geologic effects and the effects on infrastructure and public works. But that's good, no? But I think we also have to put similar emphasis on the people, because it's the people at the end of the day who are most affected by this. So you end up with people spending time in evacuation camps. And even for some, like our experience in Haiyan, it even took some considerable time before they can actually go back to their normal settlements, because they have been in the evacuation areas for quite some time. So that has to be considered. Now, in the structure of our health research system, the core agencies, again, are composed of the Department of Health, I already mentioned, the Commission for Higher Education and the National Institutes of Health. And most of our coordination with the local governments is through our Regional Health Research and Development Consortia, or what we call RHRDC. And this is usually chaired by either the regional director of the DOST for that region, or the regional director of the Center of Health and Wellness, Center for Health Development of the Department of Health. So we leave it to them who will chair, but it's actually an aggregation of all of the research agencies, institutions, entities, including private and non-governmental organizations that are involved in health research. So that's the other one. We do encourage them to pursue research in this area, because it's not only in the Harmonized National R&D Agenda, it is also in the National Unified Health Research Agenda and in the Regional Unified Health Research Agenda, because all of the regions come up with the regional health priorities as well. So That's the mechanisms available for us to make sure that the LGUs are very much involved in our disaster research initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jimmy. It's amazing how you've highlighted the coordination and interfacing between different agencies. And I can see how it's both vertical, so starting from national to the regional down to the local level, but also horizontal. So you have agencies from different sectors all working together, all interfacing together to effectively respond to upcoming disasters. So now, at this point, though, we'd also like to entertain questions directed towards the different projects that were earlier presented and featured. And just to kick off the questions for our different projects, our first project-related question is directed to Dr. Delia Señoro from the DHIVE project. Dr. Delia, are you still with us?
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Delia, maybe you can give us an overview of how I understand that DHIVE is a mobile application, correct? Is it a mobile application?
The e-Salva system is actually a hybrid and multi-platform application, one of the outputs of the DHIVE project.
I see. So the e-Salva is the mobile application component of the DHIVE project. So
Yes.
maybe Dr. Delia, can you give us more information as to how this mobile application works? So e-Salva, what a very interesting name.
Yeah, because we wanted the tool, we wanted the e-Salva system as a tool for disaster risk reduction. This is actually a hybrid application that hosts the environmental quality data sets that are factors to public health.
Dr. Delia, who are the end users of this technology? Is it the people who will be using the mobile application, or is it more for the DRR managers at the local government level?
This is a communication tool for the people and the local government units.
So
Because
it really works for both, no? So it
yes,
serves both
because
the people and the LGUs.
yes, because we have this application designed and developed for various geopolitical units. That means from the household to barangay to municipal cities and so on. And our end target, if possible, to have this tool used for the whole Philippines.
I see, I see. Now, Dr. Delia, a very interesting aspect to look into is whether this can be easily used during the actual disasters. And we all know that during disasters, sometimes or usually there's no electricity, and usually internet connection is very unreliable. So
Yes.
is the system, is the application still operational even under these conditions?
The e-Salva system can be used for now as an offline app, but with limited feature. But we are trying to develop. As you have seen that the title of the project is the development of the health index and vulnerability reduction system. We are trying to develop this application that could be used during extreme cases, like for example, no internet connection. So we're trying to look at the possibility to connect this application into the local radio stations.
I see. And Dr. Delia, is the application already readily available? Is it operational now? Is it being used already by the different localities?
We started the development of the e-Salva system in Marinduque in 2018, and we finished the project in 2020 actually. So the e-Salva system can be used in that province. And we are scaling this up, still developing. The project is still in progress in the capital cities and municipalities of Mimaropa region. So the system can be used only once it is for the region, once it is done, because the information at the household level is very important. And the assessment of the environmental quality that affects or significantly affects the public health.
Okay, so it's very interesting and exciting to know, Dr. Delia, that you are thinking of scaling it for the meantime in Mimaropa. And then I think eventually there is huge potential to also scale it in many other disaster-prone areas all over the Philippines. So I think I join everyone here, our virtual audience, in saying that we're all very excited to see how this is rolled out in your region and eventually to many other areas in the Philippines. We are receiving a lot of questions, and we thank our audience for sending in your questions in our Q&A panel. Our next live question is actually directed to Dr. Ramos on the ready-to-eat food products for children aged 1 to 5 years old. Dr. Ramos, are you with us?
Yes, Doc.
Dr. Ramos, maybe you can give us an idea of what exactly is in these ready-to-eat food products, and how are they specifically and concretely beneficial for very young children, especially during disasters? What makes the ready-to-eat food special?
Yung healthy, ready-to-eat foods for kids, no, should if it is based on the recommended energy and nutrient intake, are usually non-processed foods, no? And if ever merong processed, ito yung mga breads na merong low sugar, low salt. And with that, you can see that it is limited, no? Especially during disasters. These kinds of food is not available or very limited, ika nga. And that's why we are thinking that this development of RTE foods for children aged 1 to 5 years old ay isang milestone sa development ng emergency foods dahil nabibigyan ng pansin yung pangangailangan ng mga bata in terms of nutrients at saka ng energy. Kasi iba't ibang group ng consumers, excuse me, iba't ibang group ng consumers, bata, young adults, and the adults, or even the vulnerable sectors have different nutrient intakes or energy requirements. And currently, in Mindanao, wala kaming RTEs na formulated talaga para sa mga bata na pwedeng maibigay during disasters. Okay? Tayo naman may mga strategy na ginagawa during, let's say, sa mga evacuation centers or kuminsan sa mga disasters, na yung sa mga pinamimigay na pagkain, ang ginagawa usually ng parents, it's either they modify them like adding water, no, para hindi kasing alat, hindi kasing para pambata ika nga ang lasa, o di kaya dadamihan ng kanin, no, but still hindi sila akma para sa mga bata, lalo na yung aged 1 to 5 years old. So, kailangan namin mag-develop, may pangangailangan mag-develop ng pagkain na hindi na kailangang iluto, hindi na kailangang dagdagan ng tubig, para kung merong ganitong mga sakuna, pwede na kaagad maipamigay sa mga bata.
I agree, Dr. Ramos, and I can see how it's very strategic, no? These ready-to-eat food, especially for people who are displaced by disasters. No, usually evacuees, refugees, they don't have cooking utensils, they don't have access to clean water. So as I gather it, it's ready to eat, so no need for cooking. Correct, Dr. Ramos?
No need po.
We have this very interesting follow-up question. What is the extent of production of these ready-to-eat food? Are you already at that stage where you are producing this commercially, extensively? And are there any communities that have actually already used or accessed these ready-to-eat food, Dr. Ramos?
Itong aming ginagawa ay ano pa, it's still ongoing actually. It's ongoing. But there's ang alam ko, ang ITDI has developed a food for disaster which is being distributed right now, no? The Pack of Hope na tinatawag nila. So yung sa amin wala pa po, nasa ano pa lang siya, nasa development pa lang. Medyo marami pang gagawin, shelf life study, nutrition info, mga ganyan. Oo, ganun po.
I see. And of course, we're very excited to also see this project being more widely available, because I believe that many of our communities, especially children in these disaster-prone communities, will highly benefit from these ready-to-eat food. I'd also like to appreciate, Dr. Ramos, how you've highlighted the scientific and nutritional aspects when it comes to developing these ready-to-eat food. But also for us Filipinos, we know that food does not only hold a nutritional value, it also has a cultural value, correct? So is that cultural aspect something that you're also considering? Like, say, for example, the taste, and also you mentioned developing these ready-to-eat food for children in Mindanao. So is this cultural aspect on top of or aside from the nutritional aspect something that is also being considered in developing these ready-to-eat food?
When we started on this project, one of the first few activities that we did was to do a survey among the mothers, no, in these identified flood-prone areas in Davao City. So nag-survey kami kung ano ba yung mga gustong kainin ng mga bata. Ano yung mga panlasa na they prefer, at saka kung anong form, mga ganon. Kung ano yung mga food characteristics ng gusto ng mga batang ito. And from there, we based yung further researches namin na makadevelop ng product na matutugunan yung pangangailangan ng mga bata in terms of nutrition. And talking about also being cultural sensitive, may I in advance inform everybody that we have a proposal. No, we have a proposal to establish a center for emergency food, product development for emergency food, because here we are addressing the needs of the indigenous people or the ethno-linguistic communities, also the halal foods for our Muslim brothers, and also some food preparations for the vulnerable sectors, yung mga immunocompromised also. Ang setting kasi nito is Mindanao, no? So dito namin gagawin para matugunan yung pangangailangan namin dito, because in the recent years, as you noticed, yung mga bagyo ninyo sa Luzon mukhang pumupunta na sa amin. So mas marami na kami ngayong bagyo, mas marami na kami baha, lindol, and all these things. So we see the need for these products.
Yes, and on top of the existing threats that are also present in Mindanao, even before climate change has started creeping in. Dr. Ramos, just as a follow-up question then to the earlier questions, are there different types of ready-to-eat food? Is it like a sort of a menu where you have different types of food catering to children of different ages?
Yes, different yung ang category niya kasi is yung 1 to 5 years old, and then the 6 to 12, the older children, and then the young adults. What we're addressing now are the aged 1 to 5 years old. So,
Amazing. So there's actually a menu and different
Yep.
options available for different children from different age ranges. And I think overall, this is very important because, you know, the usual situation in many communities in the Philippines is that ang laman ng relief goods na pinapakain sa mga bata ay, you know, instant noodles with very high salt content, with not a lot of, you know,
Yeah.
nutritional value, which I think
True.
overall contributes to our different to the nutritional burden of disease here in the country, both malnutrition and obesity. Our next question naman, this time moving into micropads, we have Dr. Lori Busa. Dr. Busa, correct, no? The name of the technology is micropads.
Yes
Correct.
po. Yes po.
Dr. Busa, we have a lot of questions from the audience. They're asking, bakit paper-based? You know, because I think everyone, especially for the lay community, when they're thinking of diagnostics, they're thinking of test tubes, they're thinking of, you know, all of these high-tech machinery. And a lot of people are actually quite surprised to know that you are developing a diagnostic tool that is based on paper. So why is the innovation paper-based? And what is the scientific and practical value of that?
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for your question. Actually, marami po kasing advantages ang paggamit ng paper. So in this case, in our innovation as the substrate or platform sa paggawa ng technology na ito, una sa lahat, ang practical na advantage nito is that paper is cost-effective, mura. Hindi siya mahal, hindi po ba? So para maging accessible siya sa masa, kailangan hindi mahal ang technology ang igagawin mo para kahit ang masa ay kayang i-afford ang pagbili at paggamit nito. So kasi pwede rin naman tayong gumamit ng mga ibang substrates like polymer-based, mga glass, mga ganon, and the like. Kaya lang, ibig sabihin po nun kasi, kailangan yung prosesong gagamitin natin, medyo mas kakailanganin ng mas komplikadong ng equipment and all, so mas magiging mahal siya, so hindi siya magiging accessible sa masa. So kaya po siya, hindi katulad ng papel po kasi na I believe, kayang i-afford ng community pag dumating sa kanila yung device.
Okay, so amazing how you've thought of really incorporating accessibility as part of the inherent design of the technology, no? So
Yes, sir.
usually kasi minsan nauuna yung pag-develop ng technology, tapos later on pinag-iisipan na lang how to make it more accessible, especially financially accessible to the end users. Now, so you've mentioned about that. It's using paper makes it more cost efficient. But when it comes, of course, in diagnostics, the time is also very important, no?
Yes, po.
Timeliness and agility of the diagnostic tool is very important. So
Yes.
is that something that you're looking into? And how does the micropads compare in terms of agility and timeliness with, you know, the usual methodologies that we have when it comes to detecting diarrhea?
Yes po, of course. Kasi pagka with the use of this device, it's similar to the pregnancy test kit that we have it in the pharmacy. So yung paggamit ng device na ito, madali siyang gamitin, hindi kailangan ng mga expert, ng mga scientists to perform the test. So pwede siyang gamitin ng simpleng tao sa community. So hindi kailangan pagka minonitor natin yung safety ng drinking water on-site, hindi siya kailangang hakutin at dalhin sa laboratory at dun gawin yung measurement, which takes a lot of time pa, ganyan, and effort and materials, equipment na kailangan gamitin. Pero pagka itong device na ito, dinala natin on-site mismo, we can do on-site monitoring of the safety of the drinking water. Ayun.
Amazing. And is the tool or is micropads only able to detect diarrhea, or are there other waterborne diseases that it can also detect as well?
Actually, it does not detect diarrhea exactly. It detects the microorganisms, the pathogenic microorganisms, particularly bacteria, that cause diarrhea when ingested. So there are a lot of microorganisms kasi that can cause diarrhea naman when ingested by human beings, for example, E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, ganyan. So in our case, in the research we're doing right now, we are currently targeting detection of the presence of E. coli. So pagka yung E. coli kasi, nainom natin when it contaminates the drinking water, so yun yung mga nagkakos ng diarrhea outbreaks.
Yes, so I'm glad you also got to clarify that, no? So it's the diarrhea is the symptom, correct? And
Yes,
the tool, the micropad, actually detects more accurately the bacteria that can eventually lead to the symptom. And I'm glad that you mentioned that it's actually very portable and user friendly, which means that, are you saying, Dr. Busa, that this is something that even our barangay health workers and even people themselves can actually, use?
Yes, actually, when fully developed and well packaged na, there will be instructions on how to use. So, katulad ng sabi ko kanina, para lang din siyang magiging pregnancy test kit ba? May instructions kung paano gawin doon. So, kayang kung basta mabasa lang siya ng health worker na ito sa barangay level, even in the household actually, kahit mga nanay, mga tatay, kung gusto lang i-monitor yung quality ng water nila, kung contaminated or not with microorganisms such as this, kaya nilang, madali nilang masusundan. Ayun po.
Amazing, amazing, Dr. Busa. So you've covered cost efficiency, you've covered usability as well, but also a very important consideration for diagnostics development is diagnostic accuracy. So we talk about parameters such as sensitivity and specificity, especially when comparing how well these diagnostic tools compare to gold standards in detecting these kinds of diseases. So is that something that the project has already been able to measure thus far? How sensitive and specific is the tool when it comes to detecting the various pathogens that can cause diarrhea?
Okay, actually, we've been working on that. That's why, to tell you frankly, we have developed 5 devices, different devices, pero all to detect Escherichia coli, so E. coli in drinking water, in contaminated water. So yung mismong detection, level of detection, limit of detection ng device, we have actually identified those natin. And hopefully, pagka dinala po natin kasi we have been scheduled on the prototype testing na po this month sana, kaya lang unfortunately due to the strict implementation of GCQ, nag-GCQ kasi ulit ang Nueva Vizcaya, so we were not able to push through with this, but hopefully in the next few weeks we will be able to field test all the devices na. So we will see yung talagang efficiency ng device kapag na-field test na po natin.
I see, amazing. And we're all very excited and we're looking forward to see this product eventually being more widely available to our communities all over the Philippines. We are down to our last few questions. And of course, we appreciate the outpouring of questions coming from our virtual audience. But for the next one, let me just go back to our earlier speakers and panelists. This one goes to for Usec Rowena Guevara. Usec, under DOST's S4CP program, we heard that support is also given for initiatives dedicated to DRR-CCA, such as the establishment of the Center for Innovations for Cost-Effective Disaster Risk Reduction.
He disappeared. Yes, we have support for DRR because DRR-CCA is one of the 5 pillars of the Harmonized National R&D Agenda. But medyo lilihis ako ng konti, no? Kasi maganda itong audience natin. Mukhang hindi pa alam ng mga tao na nagpalit kami ng konti dun sa ating guidelines for the Science for Change program in establishing niche centers in the regions for R&D. Nagsama na rin kami ng mga hospitals na gustong magtayo ng R&D centers. So we are expecting that we will get proposals for R&D centers for heart, for liver, for kidney, and so on. So our hope is that this will soon be established before our term ends. Thank you.
Yes, actually, to let you know, Usec, this signaling has actually reached us, and we're glad that you started engaging us hospitals to also take part in DOST's R&D efforts. And yes, do expect a lot of proposals coming from us in the next few months. Our next question is for Usec Renato Solidum. We all know how disasters work, no? Sometimes we know what disaster is about to strike, especially if we have been experiencing these disasters time and time again. So we have typhoons, monsoons. But how about disasters that are unprecedented? So an example of this would be the Taal volcano eruption. So Usec Renato Solidum, how is the agency preparing for these unprecedented threats, things that we might be completely unprepared for?
Oh, the Taal volcano eruption in 2020 is not unprecedented. It's a very small explosion in the scale of things. Now, the Department of Science and Technology has really been advocating for preparedness to extreme natural hazards and climate change and consequences like on health. Extreme disasters are essentially large-scale events that need to be managed perhaps at the regional level up to the national level. And we do this by developing scenarios. We look at past historical events and research and modeling and forecasting. So for example, for earthquakes and volcanoes, we study faults and volcanoes and we evaluate its potential of producing large-scale events. And so that's one. For climate change, PAGASA has been doing forecasts on what will happen by mid or end of the century in terms of temperature and precipitation. No? So what needs to be done now is look at the hazards that this would bring, and especially on the effects to people, including health, to infrastructure, and to businesses. So we have developed at the Department of Science and Technology many of the projects, but one of the issues that we need to look into is developing a very good national exposure database. Exposure data that would not only locate every building, every community, anywhere in the Philippines, but most importantly, put in all the information related to the physical structure, to the persons, to the community, including health. Once we are able to do this, then we can actually project the impact soon or into the future. So one of the projects that have been funded would be the GeoRisk Philippines initiative. Projects related to health, the NICER centers are there. But extreme events are very important. Thank you for the question. The large ones are those unexpected might be. But now, with more knowledge, these are not unexpected. Before 1991, Pinatubo erupted. We call it the Black Swan event. But if we do study Pinatubo, there were larger eruptions than 1991. So with time, these things are not really unprecedented, but become actually are common. No? But that is done through research and continuous work by the different agencies of the DOST.
So it's actually quite good, Usec Solidum, that the things that the public may view as unprecedented are things that through predictive modeling, DOST is actually able to predict and project.
Correct. For example, for Taal, we were anticipating that once a small explosion will occur, it might become large very, very fast. So we already have some idea on what to do. And that is why even maybe 10 years before, we were already sharing with Batangas province and the region the scenarios that we need to anticipate and prepare. And it was good that they prepared for the worst case scenario in terms of their contingency planning. It's a matter of implementation. Of course, it's not that perfect always, but nobody is perfect during times of emergency. But we have those scenarios, and those need to be further developed for all the hazards that we face, including climate change and health hazards.
And ultimately, when it comes to action, so having this data, this projection data, this predictive modeling data earlier on will actually allow our end users, our program managers to act and prepare much early. So time is indeed very important. So thank you very much, Usec Solidum, for highlighting that. And it's all very, very exciting. But I think also in relation to that, this question for Dr. Señoro asks about how exactly does making such data, this vulnerability data or vulnerability indices data, help the community. Is this something that you see people being able to readily understand and readily act on? Dr. Delia?
Yeah. The e-SALBA system contains the various maps. One of those is we call the Health Vulnerability Index map. And the maps shows households, barangays, and municipalities. And at the household level, the index map, we call it the index map, shows dots in various colors. The dots represent households and the color represents the degree of vulnerability of the household. Now, pag in isang household, gusto niya makita kung ano ang kanyang vulnerability, ang health vulnerability index, they can click ng kanilang dot, no? Because every dot has a household ID number. So they can click on the dot and then makikita nila kung ano yung kanilang resiliency, ano yung kanilang exposure, ano yung kanilang mga exposure, hazard sa paligid, and then ano yung kanilang resiliency. So magawa nila on how to improve, no? Makagawa sila ng kanilang mga strategies even at the household level kung anong dapat nilang gawin to improve their resiliency and to reduce their vulnerability. So isa yun sa mga features na kasama doon sa e-SALBA system, specifically doon sa map. And then another one is yung proximity to hazard. Like for example, si household A, makikita niya kung how far he is from the fault line. No? And then makikita din ng LGU kung gaano karami at sino-sino ang mga nasa proximity ng fault lines. Like for example, those are among those features. And another one is we have the spatial distribution maps for environmental quality. Like Usec Guevara mentioned about that, include nila yung kidney research, like for example, because there are so many contaminants in the environment, and in every contaminant in the environment has a target organ. And one among those, ang marami sa atin, ay kung napansin natin marami tayong may sakit sa target organ, ay nagiging target organ natin ay kidney because maraming contaminants sa environment na ang target organ niya ay kidney. So if we know that, and we include the health risk map into the system, so we can make strategies, mga programs, and other necessary activities para to address this to reduce health vulnerability of our community. So I hope I answered the question.
Yes, you've answered it perfectly, Dr. Delia. And I'm able to appreciate how not only did you mention about making data available, but making sure that the data that is being made available is also understandable and actionable. Yes. So you mentioned about presenting it in a format that from the standpoint, for example, of a municipal mayor or a municipal DRRM officer is something that they can understand and something that they can readily act on.
Yes, meron kaming parang dictionary doon sa system at in our dialect.
Yes, and I think that's all part of what Usec Solidum was making the earlier point that Usec Solidum made earlier about making research more accessible and bringing it closer to the people. So it's not just throwing them data, but actually making sure that it's something that they can readily act on and translate.
Yes.
And we're down to our last question. Unfortunately, we cannot accommodate all of your questions, but we are happy to answer them after this session, after this program. So we've taken note of all of the questions submitted in our Q&A panel. But our last question goes to Dr. Jimmy Montoya. And we've seen in the past hour that we have been conversing how these three projects are actually creating impact. But we all know that these are just three of the many other projects that DOST-PCHRD is supporting when it comes to applying R&D for DRR-CCA. So, Dr. Jimmy, your question is about is asking whether what other projects is DOST-PCHRD supporting along the lines of DRR-CCA, and which ones of these projects and services can now be readily availed of or accessed by our communities and local governments all over the Philippines.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Apostol, for the question. Actually, it was also asked by one of our guest journalists, but let me just mention a number of them. Of course, we are very happy that the completed projects were already presented in this forum. But in addition to that, we have a number of projects that are ongoing. For example, we have the UP Manila project on exposure of reproductive pregnant patients and non-pregnant women to common environmental pollutants and their implications to their reproductive health, pregnancy, and fetal outcomes. So this part of the program, the bigger program, which is deals with the assessment of teratogens. Teratogens are actually environmental factors that actually can produce or affect pregnancies and birth, like abnormalities, and endocrine disruptors on the fetal maternal health. We have an ongoing project with the Baguio General Hospital in the Cordillera Administrative Region on preparedness for surge of patients during mass casualty incidents in the emergency room at level 2 and 3 hospitals in Baguio City. So this hopes to look at the readiness and preparedness of hospital facilities in that region to respond to disasters and casualties. And we hope that this will also be an example for other LGUs to adopt. With the University of Immaculate Conception in in Mindanao, we also are looking at the geospatial analysis of pathogenic Leptospira from environmental samples and incidents in Davao City. We all know that Leptospira is a common cause of renal failure, especially with the onset of the rainy season. And this basically maps out the risk of certain places based on the isolation of Leptospira, which is the causative agent in the water systems in Davao City. And lastly, not to spend too much time with the CLSU, we are evaluating portable diagnostic kits using LAMP platform in detecting Schistosoma japonicum and Leptospira in environmental food waters. Now, Schistosoma is an endemic infection in some parts of the Visayas and Mindanao. And Leptospira, again, is a common cause of renal failure and kidney disease with the onset of the rainy season when people wade in contaminated flood waters. With regards to the availability of this technology, this is already being discussed with our technology transfer people, particularly with the universities that develop the technologies. And hopefully, with our assistance, we'll be able to at least do a usable prototype that can actually be launched initially, maybe in some selected places, and hopefully in the other regions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc Jimmy. And it's indeed very, very exciting. All of these projects on DRR-CCAH. And, we look forward to seeing more and more of these projects being featured and, of course, being made more accessible to our communities and to the general Filipino public. Um, I know I mentioned that that should be our last question, but because we love our virtual audience so much, we've been appreciating the very interesting questions that you've been sending in. So we just have one more pahabol question. This one is for Usec Guevara. Usec, this question is in relation to
Dr. Louis, I think the secretary is raising his hand. Maybe
yes.
Sige, patapusin na natin si Usec. Yes. Sige, I will just follow her later.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Sec. Continue. So this question is about your point earlier about extending the opportunity for our hospitals to also participate in the R&D projects and efforts of DOST. So the question, Usec Guevara, is whether how much of the allocated budget for NICER is being earmarked for regional hospitals or for regional researchers, and what might be the priority areas that DOST-PCHRD is looking to support when it comes to these proposals extended to the regional hospitals?
Thank you for that question. When you talk about allocation for the budget, you have to understand that 2021 budget has already been allocated. The upcoming NICERs will have to be funded in 2022 and 2023. Our hope is that our proposal for the NICER budget of 1 billion pesos for next year will be approved. If that happens, then we will be able to get some of the NICERs coming in 2022. Otherwise, they will be coming in 2023. So because we are proposal driven, usually the budget is indicated in the proposals. Of course, we make sure that the budgets are reasonable, but we are proposal driven. But we have allocated that amount of money for the NICERs.
Thank you very much, Usec Guevara, for making that clarification. And of course, we do have some input as well from Secretary De La Peña.
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, thank our resource persons who joined us today. And that includes Usec Guevara, Usec Solidum, the project leaders from Mapua, from Nueva Vizcaya, and from the Philippine Women's College of Davao, and of Dr. Montoya. I just want to say that probably you will notice that in terms of participation in the research programs, they are also distributed, So we have a project in Marinduque, which is in Calabarzon. We have a project in Nueva Vizcaya, which is in the Cagayan Valley. We have a project in PWU Davao, or PWC Davao, which is of course Region 11. And in terms of the partner research institutions, so naka-distribute. So we have Mapua, we have the Nueva Vizcaya State University, we have the Philippine Women's College. That's part also of our strategy of really being inclusive, even in the R&D work. Okay, and you will notice that we cover different aspects. We have the vulnerability indices, which is a very good support for decision making. We have the paper test for pathogens, which I think is a very innovative way of doing a quick test. Okay, and we also have the ready-to-eat food of PWC. Now, we are not only contributing, okay, to our work here in our country, but these innovations will also help the rest of the region, and even the rest of the world, because they will find these innovations very useful also. Okay, we are not the only ones visited by disasters. And the outputs can definitely contribute to the inventory of Philippine innovations, which has now been recognized, up to the level of the UN, UNCTAD, the UN Commission on Trade and Development in their recent 2021 report, okay, indicated or highlighted the fact that the Philippines is number 2 only to India in terms of the overperforming countries, okay, if we talk of innovations in relation to their GDP. In other words, we are malnourished in terms of input resources, but we are producing a lot of innovations. And so this is really to the credit of our researchers, our partner institutions, to our PCHRD in this particular case, and of course to media. Okay. Before I came here to join you, I had a series of media interviews very early. Okay. Simply because they read about the progress of Dr. Jaime of our Lagundi trials that was reported by Dr. Cecil Maramba Lasarte. And so they are now asking more details about what analysis is being done and when it will be completed. And I learned from Dr. Cecil Lasarte, for example, that they will complete the analysis by the end of this month. That is only 2 days from now. So that we will be ready with some news, okay, regarding this trial. So yun lang, I just wanted to highlight the the inclusiveness of our work, and also to the reach that it can have, okay, not only here in our country but to the rest of the world. Maraming salamat sa inyo lahat.
Thank you very much, Secretary De La Peña. And I think that's very important when you highlighted how DOST is being deliberate and being proactive about inclusivity. So you are elevating more women scientists, as we have seen today. And of course, you are strengthening your access to researchers from the regions. And that all of that is very exciting and very encouraging. Now, to give a final message to our media partners and virtual attendees, allow me to give the virtual floor to a champion of science, technology, and innovation. Let's all give a virtual applause to DOST Undersecretary for Research and Development, Usec Rowena Cristina Guevara, for her closing remarks.
Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña, DOST Undersecretary for S&T Services, Renato Solidum, PCHRD Executive Director Jaime C. Montoya, to the project leaders, Dr. Celia Senoro, Ms. Maria Cristina Ramos, and Dr. Lori Shane Busa, to our moderator, Dr. Apostol, of course, to our media guests and participants, a pleasant morning to all of you. Magandang agham po sa inyong lahat. It is heartwarming to see the amount of support that we are receiving from our media participants today as we hold the second Talakayang Heartbeat this year in promoting DOST-PCHRD's completed projects under the Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change Adaptation for Health Program, or DRR-CCA. Over the years, we have strived to support our Filipino researchers in coming up with solutions that will address the health-related issues in times of calamities and disasters. As we all know, our country encounters disasters every year, whether it be from natural origin or man-made. The implication of these phenomena causes casualties where human lives are lost, properties are destroyed, and economic activities are affected. On top of these, the recent natural calamities we are facing as a nation are being magnified due to the effects of climate change, an event that is experienced worldwide but causes the most burden to vulnerable countries, including the Philippines. With the Filipino people in mind, especially those belonging in the marginalized sector, who are deemed to suffer most from the effects of these disasters, the DOST has identified the DRR-CCA as one of its priority R&D themes. Through this program, we aim to mitigate the effects of disasters and climate change in the country and eventually build resiliency, not just for our people, but for our health systems and DRR services that should first and foremost protect them amidst calamities. Today's event is proof of our commitment to make lives better for our people through health research. Through this activity, I hope we were able to educate and inform you of the many projects that we are supporting to reduce the risks of health-related problems in times of disasters. As we end today's Talakayang Heartbeat, let me thank our media participants who spent their time to join us and hear our insights about the completed projects in DRR-CCA. Allow me to invite all of you in the upcoming 40th anniversary of PCHRD as we have prepared exciting activities for everyone in celebration of PCHRD's 40 years of health research and development services for the Filipino people. I'd also like to congratulate our project leaders for a job well done and for responding to the problems that need scientific solutions for the welfare of our people. In turn, we at DOST will always find the means to support you in your R&D endeavors that are directed to provide scientific solutions to address our nation's problems. Finally, may we all use the knowledge we gain from this event and share this with other people to spread awareness and understanding about our scientific efforts towards resilient Filipino community amidst disasters through research and development. Truly, R&D is making change happen. Maraming salamat at magandang agham sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much, Usec Guevara. And without a doubt, and as you've mentioned, today's Talakayang Heartbeat showed us how R&D is definitely very critical in building resilient Filipino communities amidst disasters and emerging threats. Now, I know we're down to the last few moments of these programs, but before our final reminders, and in a truly Filipino fashion, may we now ask everyone at this point to open your cameras for a virtual photo op. And we would also like to request you all to please use the finger heart gesture that symbolizes the heart in heartbeat. So I hope you can indulge us by using the finger heart gesture. It's just super, it's simply opposing your index and your thumb. Okay, so may we please ask our secretariat to take a photo. Okay, just hold it in so that we can cover all panels, and just let us know, please, once you're done. Okay, thank you very much. And of course, thank you for indulging us for that virtual photo op. Once again, we would like to thank our friends from the media for joining us today. Of course, we'd like to thank our panelists, our project leaders, our leadership from DOST and DOST-PCHRD for the very significant insights that you've shared to our wider audience. And to our attendees who may have missed parts of the program, do not worry. You may access a replay of this press conference by liking our DOST-PCHRD Facebook page at facebook.com/DOST-PCHRD. You may also access the recording and key highlights from our Twitter page at DOST_PCHRD. So please do not forget to follow us, to also stay tuned, especially for our upcoming activities in line with the celebration of DOST-PCHRD's 40th year anniversary. Again, this has been a wonderful discussion with everyone, with our experts, with our audience. I'm Dr. Jello Apostol from the Ateneo, and this is Talakayang Heartbeat. Maraming salamat po, and magandang agham sa ating lahat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maraming salamat.
Thank you po. Thank you, Doc Jaime.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you to our
Thank you
project
po
leader.
for
Salamat
having
po to our
us.
speakers.
Maraming salamat po.
Secretary, thank you. Usec, thank you.